All right, welcome to The Weird Show. I am your host, Russell Dowden, publisher and editor of Weird Magazine, and your guide through this fast-moving journey of total weirdness. That is The Weird Show, and we got an interesting show lined up for you guys tonight, and a lot of fun we had with last week's show with Alejandro from Open Minds Magazine. That was very, very cool. We also have some guests that we're slating for later in the summer and as the fall season begins. We want to get some folks who have been on my radio shows in the past. We've had Cassandra Peterson, also known as Elvira, Mistress of the Night. We'll have Elvira probably on. I'm thinking Elvira might be a good guest, though, for October. Maybe Halloween kind of time. So we're looking forward to that. Also, a good friend of ours at Weird Magazine is also Dean Haglund. Dean is also known as Langley on the TV show hit series X-Files. And also Dean had the other pilot show that they did called The Lone Gunman. So Dean Haglund will be someone we're slated to get to here maybe in late August. I also spoke with Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist. He's often termed the father of Roswell investigations. Nuclear physicist Stanton Friedman will be joining us in the program here in August. I understand Tommy Chong and Cheech Marin are on tour. We've had those guys on our radio shows in the past, so as they make their way closer to the San Antonio and Austin, Texas area, I think we'll get those guys on the program. I don't know if we'll get them live here in SMTX.TV, but that's something to hope for. Also, another guest I'm working on getting is Moby. Moby's had some interesting experience. The ambient rock star DJ Moby, we want to get him on the program. He's actually been a topic of an interesting UFO type sighting thing, so he's been somebody. And then another guy I want to get on is the comedian Dave Attell. He's been on our shows before, and I'm really looking forward to also trying to get another guest on in Jesse Ventura with Jesse's new hit series Conspiracy Theory. They're on True TV Network, so I'm looking to maybe try to get an opportunity to speak with him. But other than that, a lot of exciting things we're doing with our experimental show here, The Weird Show, on SMTX.TV. Big shout out to our buddies over at Coolabyte, which allows for our video streaming technology that takes us through this weird journey that is The Weird Show. But without further ado, I'd like to kind of talk about our guest tonight, Tim R. Swartz. Tim has written about everything, nearly everything, regarding paranormal and conspiracy. He's got a lot of titles he's worked on out there, and some of these books he's written entirely. Some of them are he's been co-authored on. Some of these titles are The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, Commander X's Guide to Incredible Conspiracies, also Admiral Byrd's Secret Journey Beyond the Poles, Teleportation, a how-to guide from Star Trek to Tesla. That's one of his books. 2012 and the Arrival of Planet X. And Tim Swartz, he's a very interesting guy. He's also publisher of the Conspiracy Journal, and his website's queued up. I think we can maybe bring up his website and let folks take a look at that. conspiracyjournal.com is Tim Swartz's website. And so if you are curious at all about CIA sex slaves, or the sex trade slave, or UFO sightings, or even the mysteries of the inner or hollow earth theories, you will enjoy our conversation with Tim Swartz tonight. And without further ado, I'll bring Tim right up via Skype. Welcome to the program, Tim Swartz. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, Russell. I'm doing great. It's fantastic to be on The Weird Show tonight.
Well, welcome to The Weird Show. And with some of the guests we've had on, I thought that, you would fit pretty good right in here with all things conspiracy and paranormal. And we're glad to have you part of the show tonight, Tim.
Oh, thank you. Well, of all the things that you mentioned at the beginning of your show, you forgot about Nazi flying saucers. That's always a favorite subject of people who visit Conspiracy Journal.
Yeah, Nazi flying saucers, and that's something that I have as one of the questions I wanted to get in touch on. I'll get to that with you a little later in the program, but before, I just kind of wanted to say, how did you get started in writing all of this stuff? Because you cover quite a bit of ground when it comes to paranormal in general. And, what got, when Timmy Swartz was younger and got to get this whole stuff going, what was the motivational factor for you to get into writing about such odd things?
Well, Russell, oddly enough, when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about paranormal or UFOs or anything like that. I liked science fiction movies and horror movies. I was a big fan of Hammer horror movies, with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and things like that. But, when it came to supposedly real-life ghosts and UFOs and the paranormal, I didn't know anything about that. What was interesting, though, is that I got, sometime in elementary school, I got an assignment for class. Everybody got an assignment where they had to go and write a little essay about a current news item. And the teacher gave us assignments. And I got a story about UFOs. Mm-hmm. I'd never heard about UFOs, so, I wrote my essay. And you know how kids are. They're always trying to find something on you. So everyone just had a great time with that, and I was pegged as the UFO guy.
The UFO guy, huh?
UFO guy, yeah. People are like, oh, you see any Martians today? Oh, yeah, thank God. What was interesting, though, is that people would go and, make fun of you to your face. And then when there was nobody else around, they'd come to you and say, well, me and my family, we saw some strange lights in the sky, or, we got a picture, or, there's a ghost in our house. And that's what got me interested. It wasn't so much that at first I was really interested in the subject. I was interested in the personal experiences that these people were having. And that's what really got me going, was these personal experiences. And I've come to find out over the years is that practically everybody has had some kind of strange experience or another. They might not even think about it anymore. Most people, if they have something unusual happen to them, they'll laugh it off, and try to come up with a conventional explanation for it. But other people will say, that was really something strange in my life, and I have no explanation for it, and I don't ever want to talk about it again. Freaks me out.
Well, I would agree with you, Tim, is that when you hear the explanations and the eyewitness reports, that seems to be, really the bulk a lot of the stories that people bring about, and the actual testimonial aspect of people's claims. Really seems to be more the more meat and potatoes of any stories out there, I find.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, currently we really have no other evidence. I mean, as far as I know, now, some people disagree. We don't have a physical UFO in our hands that we can tear apart and look at. We don't have any, alleged extraterrestrials, that we can dissect. We don't have a ghost in a jar or anything like that. So we're left with basically the first-hand experiences from these people. And through my years as a journalist, I've pretty much developed a good bullcrap sense that I can usually tell when somebody is pulling a fast one. I mean, they don't even have to anymore. They don't even have to talk to me personally about it. I mean, I can read a story online and pretty much guarantee that that's 100%
BS. BS. Well. Speaking about pulling a fast one, let's change gears and I wanted to ask you, the CIA and the sex slave trade. This is one of the books you've written about this in one of the books. Tell us.
I didn't. I edited that book.
Okay.
Another author wrote that. Her name escapes me at the moment, but it's really an excellent book, though. I mean,
well, see, you've edited a number of titles, and I thought you might know a little bit about that as well on the CIA sex trades deal. That's something that's just outlandish to even say those words, but But there was a government project on that stuff, correct?
Well, yeah, it all goes back to a program that the CIA came up with called MK Ultra,
Right.
and that was one of the names that has been around when it comes to any kind of intelligence operation like this. It'll be one name and then another and then another and another. It's very compartmentalized. So the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and as well, it also helps hide that paper trail. And that's the only reason that we know about MK Ultra is that there was a congressional hearing about a completely different subject. I think it was like people being exposed to radiation from nuclear experiments, soldiers and things like that. And it just came out that the CIA had also conducted a lot of mind control experiments called MK Ultra. Well, it turned out that around the same time that Congress found out about this, the director of the CIA ordered all the documents about MK Ultra destroyed. His explanation was that they needed the space in the warehouse, so let's just get rid of all this stuff. Luckily, because of this compartmentalization, a number of boxes of this material survived, and through various Freedom of Information Acts, we now know some of the just absolutely incredible, almost science fiction mad scientist types of experiments that were being conducted by the CIA on just regular people like you and me, without our knowledge, without our permission. But who would give permission to mind control experiments?
Yes, and I'm familiar with Project MK Ultra, and there's a number of experiments that were ran during the 50s that the intelligence community was running on. I think it was also, maybe it was the Department of the Army Intelligence, but they were giving LSD to Army cadets, just experimenting on them. So, the government there, that's pretty out there. But again, that stuff is backed up. Switching gears, not many folks know about the Admiral Byrd's journey to the poles. Now, you've written about this, right?
Yes. Yeah. This is a book that I wrote last year called Admiral Byrd's Journey to the poles, and this book was in response to another book. Now, Mr. UFO, Timothy Green Beckley, he was the one who turned me on to this.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, take a look at this book. It was called Admiral Byrd's Secret Diary. And this was one of these books that had been around for quite a while. I think it started out as a Samatek, which, if you're not familiar with that term, that is something that people go and Xerox and pass along, and then get Xeroxed again and again, and it just passes from hand to hand. The story was that in I think it was 1947, Admiral Byrd, who was a polar explorer, both in the North and South Pole, had taken an airplane to the North Pole and had accidentally flown into the hollow Earth. If you or your reader or watchers are familiar with the whole hollow Earth legend, supposedly that there are openings in the North and South Pole that will lead into a different world within the hollow Earth. And supposedly Admiral Byrd flew into the hollow Earth, was greeted by flying saucers, and was escorted to some kind of a great city where he received a message of love and forgiveness, and basically get our asses straight with our atomic weapons, because the people in the hollow Earth weren't going to save us if we would happen to blow ourselves between the gums.
And these people inside the hollow Earth were from the past, from the future, extraterrestrials. What did the Admiral believe that these people were from?
Supposedly, they were people that had one time lived on the surface of the planet and had a high technology civilization, probably before the Ice Age,
mm-hmm.
and that some kind of great cataclysm had happened, and that they had retreated into the hollow Earth in order to escape this cataclysm, leaving the rest of us out here basically to start civilization all over again from scratch. My book, though, examined this story and basically found that it wasn't true. But the actual story of what Admiral Byrd was doing in 1947 was even more strange and bizarre than this story that was circulating. It was almost like this story was being circulated to try to give a bit of disinformation on what was really going on with Admiral Byrd and his journey to Antarctica rather than the Arctic.
Well, you and I haven't read this book that you've written here, but was he looking for Nazi UFOs?
Well, there is speculation that they were looking for Nazis because in 1947, World War II was over with, and the Navy was basically decommissioning all kinds of different ships. And for some reason, the United States military got together this huge flotilla of Navy ships, submarines, an aircraft carrier, thousands of soldiers, and made this, they called it a scientific expedition to Antarctica. But it was really a military contingent of some kind.
Not a lot of people know that, but I mean there was a group of military of the military arm that was looking for Nazis in the North Pole.
Oh yeah, well, South America especially had become a big gathering spot for Nazis that escaped from Europe. In fact, there were a couple of submarines, Nazi submarines at the end of the war, gave themselves up in South America, and speculation had it that they had actually delivered scientists, officials, and other things like that to a secret base in Antarctica. At the time, though, there was a lot of press coverage for this military expedition to the South Pole. But there was really no good explanation on why they would need that many soldiers, that much military hardware to go down there. Mm-hmm. So there seems to be some really good evidence that they were actually looking for a Nazi base down there. And even though the interesting thing about it is that the alleged Nazi base was actually quite a ways away from where they actually first landed in Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And Admiral Byrd himself had took an airplane up and was taking pictures heading towards that area. The funny thing about it is that this expedition was slated to go for most of the Antarctic winter, and in about four to 6 weeks, I think, they suddenly pulled up stakes and got the hell out of there. And with no explanation on why, they still had months to go, allegedly, and they left very quickly. And Admiral Byrd went to Washington, D.C., and he made a speech where he said that the United States had to be extremely careful because of, as he put it, foreign powers sending missiles or aircraft. I can't remember what the term was, but sending aircraft over the poles to attack the United States. So whatever happened down there at that time, it freaked Admiral Byrd out enough that he felt he had to get out of there, take his men with him, and make this speech to Congress. And consequently, he was basically told to keep quiet about what happened down there.
So what ran off, I wonder, Admiral Byrd, or if he was confronted by, space beings from the Antarctic. And I wanted to correct myself earlier. I said North Pole. I meant South Pole. But, that's a very, very fascinating story. And I didn't know that was, that you had exposed that, that was more of a disinformation ploy than that he flew into the South Pole
Well, one of the
as to really why they were there.
One of the other interesting things about this, Russell, is that a couple of months after this expedition left Antarctica, the United States then started experiencing what is called the first modern UFO flap. I don't know if it was just a coincidence. Some people have speculated that these UFOs were a contingent of Nazi UFOs that were hiding out in Antarctica and South America, and they felt that because Byrd had gone down with a military contingent into their territory, that they now had to show that they were still around, and then just like less than a month after that, we had the UFO crash at Roswell, which a number of people had said was not an extraterrestrial spacecraft, but was in fact a terrestrial, kind of like a prototype anti-gravity craft that could either be a Nazi UFO or something that the United States government had gotten from the Nazis and were experimenting on themselves.
Well, it is a historical fact that there was a lot of this disc-shaped technology craft that was obtained by either Soviet or U.S. forces from post-World War II.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually have talked to people who said that they were at, or not they were, but their fathers were at the Wright Base in Dayton, Ohio at the time, and that this was the place where these pieces of these Nazi UFOs that had been confiscated were brought, examined, taken apart, and then buried at various locations just to hide the evidence.
Well, it's very fascinating with the notion to think that we won World War II, but a lot of this had the Nazis really developed and gotten weaponry part of these flying discs. And there was all of the talk about the Foo Fighters that were witnessed by both Allied and Axis forces and dogfights there in World War II. So there was something watching these guys, whether it was other advanced Nazi disc craft or something extraterrestrial origin. A lot of very interesting things to talk about when it comes to Nazis and the whole paperclip, and we got into paperclip a little bit last week. I want to switch gears, though, and talk a little bit about the Conspiracy Journal. Tell us about that. I've got your website queued up here, conspiracyjournal.com. I've been getting your newsletters online now for quite some time. I want to say at least 3 or 4 years I've been getting these. Tell us about conspiracyjournal.com.
Well, conspiracyjournal.com, it has been online since probably the late 1990s. The newsletter itself has been circulating through email subscription since probably 1995.
Wow.
It actually started out with several different names and located at different websites. But I would say probably around 1996 or 1997, I started an association with Mr. UFO, Timothy Green Beckley, who has Global Communications, which is a publishing house. And that's who publishes my books, and Mr. Beckley publishes a lot of other fantastic books on all kinds of these favorite subjects of ours. And so Conspiracy Journal became associated then with Global Communications, and it's basically what's known as an aggregate. I collect news stories from all across the planet every week, and I try to get about 6 or 7 interesting stories. And most of these stories come from mainstream newspapers and television stations. Every once in a while, I'll have blogs and things like that. But I try to keep it associated with the mainstream media, so to speak. because there has always been a misconception anymore that the mainstream media isn't very interested in the paranormal and ghosts and UFOs and things like that. Well, the Conspiracy Journal proves this wrong, because I get just dozens of these kinds of stories every week that I have to weed through and edit down to put in each and every issue. And it's just absolutely fascinating. I mean, you're not going to see these stories most of the time, on the big network, the nightly news, NBC, ABC, or anything like that. It's these
That's
small
right.
or mid-sized city newspapers and television stations that bring us these stories. And thank heaven for them, because most of the time, they do a great job. Once in a while, you'll get some snarky stories. There's always a reporter who, wants to try to make a joke about things and, play the X-Files music.
Well, I like what the title here is. It says, it's all the news that they don't want you to know. And I got to tell you that I've been I guess, gosh, I don't know how many years I've been picking up the Conspiracy Journal, but I mean, it's been at least 5 years, I think, that I've been getting the emails from you guys. And what do you send them out? Once a week, twice a week? Sometimes I get them, I usually get them once a week, I think.
Yeah, it's once a week. I try to get it out on Fridays. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth, because I'll get all kinds of stories, which really none of them really will thrill me too much. Especially during the summer times, a lot of times it seems like that it really slows down a lot. But yeah, once a week is really all I can do. If I tried to do more than that, that's all I would be doing. And, I've got my fingers in a lot of other pots there, so everything keeps me really busy.
Well, I share your pain in that, because I find it very much a chore just to put out a magazine once a month. So I can imagine doing once a week a news journal online. That's quite a bit of work, I can tell you. We've talked about the Norway light spiral thing, and you and I spoke the other day, off the air, and you've written, teleportation, how-to guide from Star Trek to Tesla. You've talked. You're into this Tesla technology, and it's one of the things that I mentioned to our guest last week was that this Norway spiral thing, and it looks like something maybe Tesla might have dabbled in. I don't know. It doesn't look like a downed Russian missile to me. But what are your thoughts on Tesla technology, and even if you care to comment on the Norwegian sighting thing too?
Oh, sure. The first video that I saw, and the first still pictures that I saw of that, my reaction first was like, oh my gosh, that's just absolutely fantastic. But you always have to kind of, take any kind of photographs or video with a grain of salt, because they can be easily manipulated. And later I saw some different videos that were taken from a different vantage point that didn't have, like the bright halo surrounding it and the bright blue trail. The most predominant video and picture that we see on the internet now shows like a real bright blue trail and a very large spiral and everything like that. Some of the other ones I saw looked a lot more like a missile with one of its engines off and spinning around. I've seen it before. It's really, up until recently, it hasn't been something that you have seen too much. So, it kind of makes me wonder almost if the Norway incident wasn't something unusual, and now, whoever those, powers that be that everybody loves to talk about, has then set up some missiles with the engines off, just to kind of replicate that and say, oh, see, that's all it was. It's just an errant missile. No need to worry. Go back to watching Dancing with the Stars and American Idol. Don't worry about what's really going on out there. We've got everything covered there.
Well, as we're talking, I'm queuing up this video of this Norway spiral now, and just to let people see what this looked like. It was pretty bizarre, but see if I can't get this to full screen.
Yeah, it really is bizarre, and it's I have never. I mean, I've seen some stuff, before and after that looks somewhat like it, but I've never seen anything that quite looked as unusual as this. Which I mean,
well,
I'm never going to go and completely commit myself to something like this and say, oh yeah, it's definitely real. I know it was something real and weird, but it's it looks weird to me.
Well, you've got to keep that that bullshit-o-meter, I guess, kind of got to keep that up pretty, keep that guard up pretty high there, But I mean, it doesn't look to me like anything like a downed Russian missile. To me, I find it funny because it looks to me like something right out of a Star Trek Gene Roddenberry's Deep Space Nine kind of thing.
Oh yeah, the time tunnel type of thing,
Time tunnel, yeah.
Right. Well, and you mentioned Tesla earlier. I mean, after this all happened, there was a lot of internet buzz going around about this possibly being some kind of Tesla-based technology device that the Russians were using to send some kind of message to President Obama for some reason. I'm not quite sure what that message would be, because Obama was in Norway at the time that this happened. So it's interesting because we hear a lot anymore about these kind of supposedly Tesla-based technology.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really amazing is that we're talking about a guy who lived in the very late 19th century and the very early 20th century, and we're still talking about his inventions and his ideas that possibly could be being used and utilized today by various powers across the planet.
Well, Tesla certainly. I mean, he was such a man ahead of his time that he's invented some things that we still are take for granted today with all the very interesting things that he's come up with, and then the government came in and took all of his technology when he died.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the lights that we're both sitting under. I mean, we can thank Tesla for that. I mean, radio. Tesla was the guy who basically invented radio. I mean, everybody attributes it to Marconi, but it was Tesla who developed the technology that Marconi used to do his experiments. And before Marconi was doing this, Tesla, he had the radio transmitters that could transmit all across the planet radio signals. But he was the type of guy that once he got bored with one idea, he was off on another one. And radio, that was way back there. He had other things. He had other fish to fry, and he had other inventions that he had to get. The big thing that Tesla was interested in was the wireless broadcasting of electricity. He wanted to do away with the whole electrical grid system that he started himself, and he knew how to do it too. I mean, he had a tower built on Long Island, New York, that he was ready to go to start broadcasting electricity.
Well, that's the thing that the powers that be certainly didn't want us to have that free energy ability. Where's the profit in that?
Well, I'm sure nowadays that somebody could come up with some way to hook a meter onto it. But at that time, you're right. The J.P. Morgans and the Westinghouses, they couldn't conceive of any way that they could put a meter and charge people for just picking up electricity out of the atmosphere. So they made sure that Tesla's funds were completely withdrawn, and that his name was besmirched as much as possible. And, you know, I mean, Tesla, he wasn't the type of guy that he kind of helped them along the way, because he definitely was an eccentric guy. You know, he was a great genius, probably the greatest modern genius that has come around for quite a while. But you know, I mean, it's you know, all you need is just a little bit of bad press, and that's it for you. You know?
Well, we're going to take a quick short break, Tim, and run a couple of sponsor announcements real quick. And then I want to come back on the other side of this break and ask you some of the top conspiracies, in your opinion, of all time. And I think we'll do that and kind of see what you think of the top conspiracies that rank in all time. This is The Weird Show. Our guest, Tim Swartz. We'll be right back with a brief announcement from a couple of our show sponsors. We'll be right back.
I woke up this morning with the sun down, shining in. I found my mind in a brown paper bag.
All right, tonight's show is brought to you by Fault Line Liquor with their new back-to-school drink this coming August. The new drink, there's the Nutty Professor that these guys are working on, the new drink over at Fault Line Liquor, so check that out. Your friends at Fault Line Liquor. That's 512-754-7468. Go by and see Art at 1904 Ranch Road 12 over there in Ranch Road 12. It's Fault Line Liquor. Also next to them is next door to them is De Blasio's Pizza, reminding you to don't get busted ordering corporate chain pizza. Shop local at De Blasio's or log on online and visit De Blasio's at deblasios.com. And then if you go right a little bit further, right down from them, in the same shopping center, I don't know what it was tonight with all the sponsors, they're all in the same shopping center. Great Horse Saloon is right next door to them. And tonight is Lebowski Wednesdays with $2.50 Caucasians tonight there at the Gray Horse Saloon. So best in live local music there at the Gray Horse Saloon. Go by and see Kim and Mike and all the guys over there. And finally, Italian Garden, reminding you that dinner is served daily right there at Italian Garden. So they've always got great pastas and pizzas. And, of course, at Italian Garden, you can always bring down your own bottle of wine. So our fine friends over there at Italian Garden. And that's Italian Garden, and that's Amore. All right. Some of our new sponsors there on The Weird Show. And, speaking of weird, I really want to get back to our guest in the top conspiracies of all time, Tim. What's got to rank as the biggest conspiracy, or maybe the top two conspiracies of all time for you? Tim Swartz, you've got to tell us, what do you think is some of the biggest two, at least, big conspiracies of all time?
Well, Russell, up until really recently, I mean, the big one naturally would have been the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one that a lot of people have concentrated, and Jim Mars, who I think is going to have. I know he's been on your radio show. Hasn't he? His great book, I think it was Crossfire, detailed the Kennedy assassination, and I mean, there's just all kinds of just weird, mysterious things associated with that. I mean, you cannot tell me that there wasn't something going on with the Kennedy assassination. I mean, there's been a lot of very recently, debunking books and documentaries, showing scientifically, with computer generated images on, why it was Oswald up on the 6th floor using an Italian rifle with a bolt action on it that I think cost him, like $12 mail order. And I don't know if you have ever fired any kind of bolt action rifle, but to be able to to cock that in the amount of time that allegedly Oswald was able to do that, and to get those
get that many shots off in that little amount of time, I know it's really ridiculous. And I did meet with Jim Mars over at Brave New Books. He had a lecture over there. It's one of my advertisers, our friends at Brave New Books here in Austin, Texas. He had a lecture, and we actually went to that lecture on JFK's birthday, and they actually had some birthday cake out there, and very, very compelling, some of the arguments that Jim Mars, of course, JFK's film was based on Jim Mars' book Crossfire. Let's go to the phone lines, if we can here.
Sure.
Welcome to the Weird Show. You are on the air. No, maybe you are not on the air. If you want to call in, though, I do want to shout out the number. It's 512-754-0084. Well, let me check on that one.
Paula, sexy lady, ready to talk to you.
What do we got here? Oh, I got it helps if I turn the phone receiver on. Welcome to the Weird Show. You're on the air.
Hey, Russell, how you doing?
Good. How's it going? Who's this?
Hey, this is Jaime.
Hey, Jaime. How you doing?
Doing good, buddy. I'm trying to watch the show on my phone. It's a little pixelated, so I'm missing bits and pieces of the topic, but it's really cool and interesting.
Yeah, our guest Tim Swartz has written a number of books on ranging from Nazis to underground bases and UFOs and a lot of things paranormal. You have a question for Tim? He's our guest tonight.
Yeah, I caught on to the Nazi part. I'm really fascinated with that, but I wasn't able to get enough info off the phone to really produce a question for that. But I was going to ask a question about the Norway spiral light. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Norway spiral.
Forgive me if I'm asking something that was already discussed, but again, I was having trouble hearing everything clearly and catching it. But is there a theory as to what causes that? Is it somewhat related to the northern lights in the way that they, appear and such, or what's the scoop on those lights?
Tim, I'll let you tackle that.
Russell, you're going to have to repeat that question back to me because I could not understand him at all. I apologize.
Oh, okay. No, he was just asking about the Norway spiral and if that was anything affiliated at all with the Norway lights or the Northern Lights.
Oh, the Northern Lights. Oh, no, that's a new one to me. I sincerely doubt it, though. I will say that there is some theories that the Harper Ray in Alaska can actually manipulate the Northern Lights to achieve various effects. And in fact, the Norway spiral had there's been a number of theories saying that it was some kind of hearth experiment. Once again, possibly gone wrong, or action that was using the electromagnetic forces, that the lines of force that go in the upper atmosphere. And using the manipulation of the Northern Lights to achieve this effect for whatever reason. Some people say, a Stargate or some kind of, time tunnel effect.
Mm-hmm.
But as for any kind of verifiable proof on any of this, it's just not there. I mean, we can just speculate endlessly on it,
Well, thanks for calling in, Jaime.
Hey, yeah, Russell, hey, man, good job on the show, man, and keep it going, man, and I'm watching, man.
All right, man, thanks for calling in, Jaime. I'm glad you're watching, brother.
Hey, Mr. Schwartz, thanks for the novel's worth of information. You have a good night.
Thanks, bro.
We'll see you.
All right, man, that's Jaime Garcia. He was telling you, nice to watch you on the show there, Tim.
Oh, great.
Well, you've spoken also, and now let me shout the phone number out again, if we can, 512-754-0084, 754-0084, if you'd like to call in and have a question related to paranormal topics, UFOs, conspiracies. I know we were talking about the Kennedy assassination a moment ago. 512-754-0084. If you'd like to call in. And I'll also get you to chime on this Dulce underground base thing here as well, Tim. Come on, tell me a little bit about that while we wait for another phone call to come in. What's going on with Dulce? Because you hear a lot of people talking about Dulce, New Mexico.
Well, supposedly in a mesa outside of Dulce is a secret underground base, either run by the military or evil extraterrestrials that are out there mutilating cattle, or both. That there's some kind of unholy alliance between the United States military and these evil gray extraterrestrials, and this base supposedly was built sometime in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. A lot of the Native Americans who live in that area said that there was a lot of military activity going on that mesa at the time. But what's really interesting, though, is all around Dulce is that a number of the cattle ranchers have experienced some extremely odd cattle mutilations.
Yeah, that's true.
In the area, which I think has led to speculation about this base. Myself, I think it's actually probably more of a disinformation campaign because there was a gentleman by the name of Paul Benowitz, mm-hmm. who was a radio technician, and he thought that he was listening to radio frequencies that he said was coming from extraterrestrial craft over a nearby Air Force base. And the UFO researcher William Moore said that he actually became involved with a plot by the military, the Air Force, I think is what it was, to basically drive Benowitz crazy, give him all types of just really bizarre and horrible information, about evil aliens kidnapping people and dissecting them, and the Dulce base was part of this, and consequently Benowitz did. I mean, he
went crazy.
He fell off the deep end. Yes. I mean, I don't know if that was their actual intention, or if they just wanted to, kind of draw him away from whatever possible, top secret experiments they were doing at this base. May have had nothing to do with, UFOs or anything like that.
There are underground bases, though. I mean, as part of the continuity of government program that kind of was exposed in the mid '80s there. But there are a number of underground bases, and that could be just part of one of them. I mean, New Mexico is clearly a very militarized state with all of the Los Alamos there and the National Lab and all of that. But I mean, it's a good conspiracy, isn't it, Tim? I mean, some of these you'd like to believe and think, hey, this is some really far out stuff. You'd like to kind of think some of these make great stories, but I don't know. Where on your BS-a-meter, where does the Dulce underground base stuff rank on your BS-a-meter?
On a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest, I would say that it's maybe around a 3.5. Because you're right. I mean, there are secret underground bases. I mean, we know that for a fact. Whether or not they have anything to do with UFOs or evil extraterrestrials or anything like that, that's I sit on the fence with that, because I'm still not entirely convinced that all UFO reports are strictly extraterrestrial. I think that we're actually seeing a phenomena that probably has a number of different explanations. I mean, could be paranormal, interdimensional, time travelers. That's one that I really, I really love to speculate on that one. And even, extraterrestrials or secret of military high-tech technology.
Have you yourself seen UFOs at all over the years, or have you had a UFO experience or anything like that, Tim?
Nothing really spectacular. I mean, I've seen some lights in the sky, but I think that because of the experiences that I've had, talking to other people, and also being a trained observer, I know my aircraft. I know the difference between satellites and stars and Venus and things like that. A lot of these reports are more, just these mundane explanations. I mean, I have been on UFO watches with people, and they have pointed at what is literally an airplane with its landing lights on, saying, "Oh, look, there's a UFO," and I'll say, "No, that's an airplane with its landing lights on." And oh my God, I mean, get the big sticks out and run me out of the neighborhood, because I didn't believe that that was a flying saucer with the Space Brothers coming down to enlighten us and save us from ourselves.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? Let's change gears a little and talk. What do you think about the all of this New World Order talk that you hear? Some of the mainstream media talks about the New World Order and that that they're really trying to destroy the United States with these nefarious groups such as the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderbergers. What does Tim Swartz know about the New World Order, and is there really a sinister plot to bring us into a one world government, a one world currency? What are your thoughts on this, Tim?
Well, I don't think we really need some kind of nefarious group to do ourselves in. We seem to be doing a pretty good job all by ourselves.
Yeah, all on our own, right?
Yeah. I do think that there are power brokers out there. Mm-hmm. In the United States, in Europe, very high-powered, rich, old money families that exerts a lot of control over what happens in the world. I mean, these are the people who, they control munitions and energy and things like that. They control the banks, and it's very easy to tweak a few things and ruffle a few feathers and get some things going that they want going. I think it's very interesting that on 9/11, shortly before 9/11, there were a number of stock options that were being sold for the airlines that ended up being associated with 9/11. I can't remember what the term was, but basically it was
put options.
They were betting that the stocks on these companies would go down.
That's right.
And a couple of days before all this happened, there was a lot of money being passed back and forth along these lines. Now, you can't tell me that somebody did not have some kind of prior knowledge of what was going to go down. And when I say somebody, I mean somebody who has got the money and is very high up on the food chain when it comes to the power brokers. I mean, it wasn't somebody like you or me or the guy down the street. I mean, this was somebody who had the money and had the knowledge for some reason. I think that it is going to be inevitable that we are going to have at some time in the future a one world government. I think that's just the way that things are going to go. I mean, it's not going to be an easy thing, and I'm not going to say it's going to be any better or worse than what we have right now. But I just see that this is something that is just going to happen.
Is this supposed to be something that we're just going to allow to happen? I mean, the end of U.S. sovereignty and kneeling before a global dictator, is this what things have come to? And are we supposed to just I don't understand that one. I don't see how any agenda like that could be pushed through.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's probably not going to be easy, and probably there's going to be something catastrophic happen that'll bring it about. Whether it'll be a natural catastrophe, take for instance, like an asteroid falling from the sky, or a man-made catastrophe. some nukes flying back and forth.
Yeah, you could say nukes going back and forth, or as Norio Haikawa has often said, that a false flag UFO event, either real or manufactured, would be a perfect opportunity to bring us into some sort of new world order scenario. And I don't know. That's a creepy one. We've got about 4 minutes left on the program. What do you think about that false flag UFO?
Oh, it's that has definitely been bandied around by various intelligence groups, military factions, think tanks, and things like that. I mean, I think it's the Operation Blue Beam.
Blue Beam, yeah.
We use like a holographic technology. Of course, we're talking about, this is a story that has been used in science fiction for a number of years. I mean, brush the dust off of it. I mean, this is so old. There was an Outer Limits episode, in fact, that uses the same scenario.
I've seen that Outer Limits episode, and the nuclear bombs and the ETs and all of this crazy stuff.
And it seems to me that it was Werner von Braun who said that sometime in the future that this was what's going to happen. That we're going to have Cold War, terrorists, maybe an asteroid threat, and then a false flag extraterrestrial invasion.
Well, whether it's extraterrestrial invasion or underground bases or the New World Order, I don't know, but we will always be able to read about these types of things in the Conspiracy Journal. Tell us, fire again off your websites, and tell us how people can sign up for the Conspiracy Journal, and just how they can get your books, and just get in touch with you in general, Tim, because I'm a big fan of your work, and occasionally we publish some of the things that you talk about in the journal, in Weird Magazine and some of our news segments. But how can folks get in touch with Tim Swartz and get a hold of your books? And also just subscribe to the Conspiracy Journal. Tell them how they can subscribe to your newsletter.
Sure. Well, all they have to do is just go to my website, www.conspiracyjournal.com. On the upper right-hand side, there's a place where you just put in your email address, sign up for the newsletter. You'll be requested to confirm, naturally that you did sign up for it. It comes out every week. On the site you can find all of our email addresses, trswartz@hotmail.com for anybody who wants to just send me something right now, tweak me a little bit. And books, you can find our books on the site. You can find it on Amazon.com, Tim Swartz and Beckley, Commander X, we do them all. And I encourage everybody to check out the site and sign up for the newsletter. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, you'll love the Conspiracy Journal. I guarantee it.
You really will. You really will. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Conspiracy Journal, and I got to tell you, we've got an interview coming up here in the August issue with Tim Beckley, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But I really wanted to get you a part of the show because you're very well versed and everything, and I want to really thank you for jumping aboard and being part of the Weird Show. So thank you very much, Tim.
I had a great time. I really appreciate you having me on.
Right on. Well, there you go. Tim, thank you very much. Again, his website is theconspiracyjournal.com. Check that stuff out. And big fan of his work at the Conspiracy Journal. And again, a lot of good stuff coming out from those guys up there. And stick around. Next week, we're going to have more weirdness for you. We've got our guest, Michael Sala, will be on from the website exopolitics.org. And so we were going to be having a brief talk with Dr. Michael Sala, see what he thinks on extraterrestrials and government conspiracies all on his own. And then later down the road, we'll try to get Dave Attell on, as well as some of our other guests that we want to have lined up. This is The Weird Show. We'll see you next week.